Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and you're listening to Job Search Radio. Networking. We all know what networking is, and we all know it's important in our job search. But here's a fact for you. Most people lurch from job search to job search, and they let their networks die in the middle. Now, I believe that's a mistake, and my guest Andy Miller also believes it's a mistake. And we're going to be talking with you about many of the reasons why you need to keep networking even after you've landed in your next job. So hang in there, enjoy the show, and before I ask you to start singing along, I'm going to make a plea to you that at the end of the show, go over to iTunes, leave a review for me, 5 stars please, leave a comment. It helps people to discover the show. Now, let's sing together.
Are you looking for a new job or interested in leveling up? Job Search Radio is your go-to resource for insider tips on job hunting and growing your career. Here's your host, Jeff Altman.
So my guest is Andy Miller, who's president of Brainworks, a New Jersey-based search firm that's been in business for more than 20 years. Andy, welcome to Job Search Radio. Great to have you on board.
Thank you, Jeff. Great to be here.
Terrific. How did you ever wind up getting into recruiting? I'm always curious about that. I know I took an odd path to get in. I'm just curious about you.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Thanks, Jeff. So really way back when I started my career to be in counseling and psychology, I spent 3 years in social service settings and then needed to transition into business for economic and, wanting to have a family and all those good things. And so got into sales for about 10 years in the phone business. And then I was getting antsy about what was going to be next for me and started looking into the recruiting industry at a customer that was a large franchisor, and that's how I got intrigued by it. And the more I checked it out, I just felt like it was a perfect fit for who I am in terms of being competitive and driven and yet being very people-oriented, obviously, with the psychology background. So I couldn't have scripted a better fit in terms of business for me.
Thank you. I was curious about that because it's very rare that, little boys and little girls grow up to say, I want to be a headhunter when I grow up. So I've been doing some surveys recently just to try and find out. So let's get into this and have me start by asking, so you and I both have done recruiting for a long time, and we understand the importance of networking, and I know people roll their eyes up on, I talk about networking because it's one of these things that they just don't want to do. So why should people be doing networking? I want them to hear it again just because it's so critical for job hunters.
I see it as a myriad of benefits to an individual. Obviously, if you're in a job search, you want to network, but because the contacts, that's how you're going to, people lead you to people that lead you to people that tell you about things that aren't necessarily published out there on the web all the time. But hey, I've got a friend who's got a business, or I got a guy who's looking. That's the way the game of the job search and just in networking in general. The other thing that from where I sit is, you're in a job and maybe you need some information on something. Maybe you have, you're looking for a vendor. Just maintaining networks, I think, is just smart business because there's a wealth of information that your network can provide you that can serve you whether you're in a job and you need something accomplished or whether or not you're in a job search too. I could go on, but those are a couple top of mind.
And we're going to want you to go on and on, but I just want to simply say, in agreement with you, I have clients that will ask people about their LinkedIn networks and what they use it for, and the wrong answer is to say, I use it for job hunting, because that's the assumption. What you're speaking about is reason number one when answering that question. As much as you want to profess that you know everything in an interview, you obviously don't. So how do you wind up getting more information? That is from your network. So having a good and well-connected network becomes real important, which is really the subject of this show, is the notion of maintaining your network after the job search is over, and why that's really critical. So you and I now are talking about reason number one, which is, you don't know everything. You need help. You want to be able to reach out to people. Who do you reach out to? Perfect place is your network. Have you run into instances where you know of people in the professions who've done that to great benefit?
Yeah, I think that what I've heard from executives is that the ones that have maintained that network, and it's like life, it's relational, that if I've had a 10-year relationship with this person, if I've called them up, I was just thinking about before, the other thing is, life is a two-way street, right? Can I provide something for my network so the people I have, whether they're looking for some insights or there's some piece of information I can give to them. But yeah, those that are successful, I believe, draw upon those things, because you just said it earlier. Smart executives and people in business today, no, they don't know everything, and there's a wealth of information and topics and subjects, whether you're getting into, e-commerce or whatever the newness now is in business. So, one wants to stay current on trends and things. So, I've heard dozens of stories of candidates recently have told me they've gone back to school to get additional training and learning on new subjects, which is wonderful because the world's changing fast.
The world changes fast. How do we leverage that knowledge? How do we leverage what we've already built in new directions? Because, folks, I'm just going to go into my insider tip because this seems to be the perfect place to do it. So I'm not going to do a formal introduction for it. I'll just simply say the statistics from the U.S. Department of U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics are, in the course of our lifetime, each of us is going to have 11.7 jobs over the course of our lifetime. And most of them are going to be by the time we're in our late 40s. Catch that one. Almost 12 jobs by the time we're in our late 40s. And for most of you, half of those jobs occur before the time you're 24. 24! I think you need your network, You don't wind up landing all these positions and being quite as versatile as you might unless you have a network. So far we've been talking about we don't know everything, and the fact that for most job hunters, their careers are going to take lots of different pivots. Out of curiosity, in the people you find jobs for, do you see that as well in their resumes or their backgrounds?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I've been asked a lot of time, generalist or specialist, I guess, in terms when you say pivots. What it makes me think is diversity of skills that one has to offer, whether you're sales or marketing or operations, whatever function you are. And I think it's a double-edged sword. I think that the more diverse you are is valuable, yet sometimes industry wants that specialist, someone that's been siloed in that operations function, just to pick an example. So, I typically recommend that people get cross-functional experience so they're more well-rounded. One of the things that a lot of candidates say to me is when I ask them career aspirations, they say, I want to be a general manager. I want to run a business one day. Well, how do you do that? Well, then you have to learn all the different silos and functions within that business so you have your arms around it.
And thus the notion of doing transitions in different places. I remember years ago working with someone at the old Merrill Lynch, now part of Bank of America, who had gotten into one of the formal programs at the firm where every 18 months she was in a rotation. It's important to get that kind of breadth of experience, and often the way that you qualify for it is through your relationships with people internally to the firm. Because again, although this is about job search, well, job search can be internal to an organization because, as I said on an earlier show, or one of my guests said on an earlier show, when should you start your next job search? Day one of your new position. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're out looking externally for something else, but you're looking internally for how things operate and who you can start connecting with internally to start creating an impression. So, nice point in there, Andy. I appreciate it. So, we've been talking about pivots here and other stuff. Why else should someone maintain their network?
I guess the phrase that keeps coming up for me is that it's just smart business, right? To your point about you never know where your career might go, or the things that you may have an interest in. I'll make it up. Maybe you want to serve on a nonprofit board. Maybe you want to do something completely different. But the fact that you've built those networks, and I think your point you just made, Jeff, was great, that internally, as soon as you got a new position, but how do you get known, and how do you in other departments or other areas, and those networks can serve you. It can come back 10 years from now, a guy who remembered you and said, wow, yeah, I'd love to recommend you over to that board or over to this organization. That it may be a personal interest. It may not even be a business interest, but I mean, that's to me, so it's just smart business and life to maintain your relationships because it's only going to serve you. I can't think of a downside to doing that personally.
But it's so much work to do. It's hard. Is it really hard or a lot of work, Andy?
It really isn't that hard. I'm more of a touch guy. I use all the tools of LinkedIn and emails, and I personally like ear-to-ear communication. But there's a lot of ways to touch people, even if you have a deep relationship. See, I believe I want to establish that relationship with you, and over time. Now, if you and I send an email to each other, we have a relationship already. I know you, so that it's not impersonal. But again, with technology, with tools, and with old-fashioned just ear-to-ear communication or even texting, there is a ton of ways to keep in touch with people, and it isn't that hard. Like life, it's a mindset. If you make it a mindset that this is of value to you, then you will do it, right? You just have to put it top of mind that it's important.
And you made a great point, because in days of old, when I got into recruiting back into the Stone Ages, I was New York-centric in the work that I did, meaning, for those of you who don't understand that lingo, I only filled technology positions in New York City, and every once in a while I would do a New Jersey job. So I would have to go out of my way to meet people in person, schedule time to get together with them in order to do networking. Now my practice is national in scope. No one has that expectation of me. However, I still want to network, and I'm not going to get on a plane to Madison, Wisconsin or Los Angeles, California to do it. Most of the time I'm doing it by phone, email, Skype, just popping in on people online with IM on Facebook. I'm waiting for LinkedIn to offer IM. LinkedIn, if you're listening to the show, how about an instant messaging feature, please? There's lots of different ways that you can connect in order to maintain that relationship. And one of my favorites, and this is one of the easiest ones in the world, is the holiday note. As you get closer to Christmas or whatever your celebratory holiday might be, for a lot of you, it's a nice way to reach out, bring people in contact with what you've been doing, what's going on in your family, and put that sort of soft touch on in order to maintain that connection. So continuing on here, I think it's pretty easy to do networking these days, much easier than it used to be. It takes a lot less time. In preserving the network, it's not necessarily only about calling and saying, hi, how are you? I know there are other forms that people do these days with sharing content. For example, on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook. when you get one of those articles forwarded to you, if you think about your own reaction, Andy, what happens for you when you see one of those articles?
Yeah, for me, if I see an article that, it's on, how to create more efficiency in a business or something like that. Wow, I got a client over in New Jersey who's in the food industry who's challenged. This is perfect for him. Again, I think if you're, to the whole topic of it, do you really value the relationships and network? I'm always thinking about my clients and how can I bring more value to them, right? So same thing with network. Even if it's a friend, somebody came to see me the other day who's a personal friend and was in a job search, and we know each other, and I spent almost 2 hours with him because I cared. I wanted to do something for him. So my point is, if I see that article, and I'm always thinking about, who does this apply to, and will this have some benefit? Let me share this with them. There might be something that helps him save millions of dollars, or brings an idea that to light in the business. And I love that I could potentially be a spark just by forwarding this one article.
And that good karma benefit has an interesting way of coming back later on. And you don't do it for that reason, of course. It is legitimately about trying to help, but it's amazing how often that occurs. And I want to backtrack for one thing you said earlier, Andy. We were speaking about internal networking and going out to start making contacts with people. Folks, I want to remind you, those people at your firm, your new firm, they may not stay there forever, Statistics, as we just heard, are that they're going to have a lot of jobs over the course of their career. They're going to wind up landing in a new place, needing to fill positions, or wanting to help with supporting the firm with staffing positions with referrals. We all know referrals are the backbone and the lifeblood for organizations. They prefer that to recruiters. Sorry, I had to whimper a little bit there. And they prefer not advertising. They'd rather get a referral. So that becomes a basis for you being introduced very often. I know it works in my practice with how I wind up getting clients. I'm sure it works in yours as well.
No question about it. I mean, obviously organizations value the people that they have. I mean, to the point where, dozens of organizations pay, employee referrals, if they refer somebody, a friend or, a colleague that they know who might fit a position, because to your own words, listen, it's always economics, and it's less expensive for an organization to take an internal referral than to use a headhunter to fill a position. But, to your point, I think it's strengthening those things, because if someone's there 2-3 years and you didn't build a relationship with them, that's a lost opportunity for you, because he or she might move to 3 other companies. But if you had that relationship, you had lunch with them, you understood what they did in the company, and how you might be able to not just network but also offer them something, all those things continue to build the network and have value, and ultimately can pay dividends down the road for you.
I think all of us of our generation grew up hearing the phrase, it's not what you know, but who you know that matters. There was the phrase about the old boys club and the benefits that men had over women, or men from a particular university or social class had over others who were not of that gender, university, or social club. So when all is said and done, folks, having that network allows you to advantage yourself in your job search and in your career in ways that you will find startling. Is it better to ignore this or to use it? How much time do you think people should spend weekly in order to maintain their networks?
I don't know that I have an absolute, but I would think that a couple hours a week, 3 to 5 hours. I mean, in the course of, obviously you're busy, or even if it's an hour. I mean, any time invested in that, I think serves you. Again, it's just, everyone's busy. Everyone's, in today's, fast-paced world, you got to do more with less. So people are working more hours, but. If you put an hour in, that might be sufficient. But, the more time you invest in it, obviously there's a value. The challenge is, like most of us, we pay attention to the immediate. And if you're not in an immediate job search, it may not be top of mind. So my advice there would be to, whether, like example, I just put something on my calendar to remind me to do something twice a week that was a 5-minute task. So, it's simple things like that if you just remind yourself, it probably would take less time. Probably maybe not even an hour. Maybe it's a half an hour a week, but it's 10 minutes here, it's 10 minutes here, it's 10 minutes there, and you've just maintained your hundreds or thousands, whatever your contacts are of networks, just by the little tasks.
I agree with you, and I do understand that time is precious for everyone. Well, you've got a new job that you're in, or you're working to get a job, and time just starts getting away from you. I was listening to a podcast. I want to say it was on HBR, Harvard Business Review, and their podcast, but it could be a different one, where they were interviewing the guy who started Evernote, and he was talking about how we're all doing a lot of things in less time than we used to. So in his example, when we all sat at a desktop and did our actions, we might spend an hour on something consistently. And then we start to move to phones and tablets, and it started to get cut down to maybe 10 minutes at a time, and doing it over the course of I think a total, he said, of an hour or two, let's say, a day. And with Apple Watch, he was saying that his statistics from Evernote were already showing that people were using it for less than a minute at a time, but 200 times a day. These inputs, these networking points, don't have to be long or lengthy. They just have to occur. And folks, you got to make the time to sustain your network. Otherwise, you go out there for the next job search, lurching from one search to another one 2 years later, to another one 4 years later, trying to build up your contacts again instead of letting them become fallow. A lot better to maneuver them, massage them, and to build your network throughout. Andy, thank you for making time today. How can folks find out about you, the work that you do, and the work that Brainworks does?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. No, it's been my pleasure to be here. So, we're on the web. Our website is www.brainworksinc.com. That's BrainWorksinc.com. And if you go there, you can read about our different practice groups and, obviously the industries that we serve. And, I'm happy for people to make contact if they want to reach me directly. It's Andy@BrainWorksinc.com, and I'm happy to respond.
Terrific. Thank you again. And folks, we'll be back next time with more advice to help you with your job search. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and I'm going to point you over to my website as well, thebiggamehunter.us. There's a lot there that you can watch, listen to, or read to help you find work more quickly. Also want to invite you, if we're not already connected on LinkedIn, send me a connection request at linkedin.com/IN/the-big-game-hunter. And last point, if you have a question about job search, you are not alone. Trust me. Most people make mistakes, though, of asking the wrong people for advice, friends, family, maybe a former manager who doesn't know much more than you do, but they've hired a few people and they suddenly present themselves as an expert. Instead of getting the wrong advice, reach out to me, and you can do it in one of two ways. You can schedule time through my website, again, thebiggamehunter.us, and there's a tab that says Have Your Job Search Questions Answered, or you can just call me out of the blue through prestoexperts.com, Presto experts.com, where I'm a job search and career coaching expert. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Hope you have a great day.
For more job search advice, visit Jeff's website at thebiggamehunter.us. That's thebiggamehunter.us.